Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today we have Molly Denham with us. Molly has had an impressive career spanning over 30 years, including 22 years in the Air Force, and I think even some time with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Molly, welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend with our listeners. Tell us a little bit about your history and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. I am as you said, a career administrative professional. I spent 22 years in the Air Force, and I did administrative work throughout my career. And I did culminate my career at the Pentagon, working for the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff as his executive assistant. And then when I retired, because admin is what I know, I opened my own admin agency, Vexa Services, and I provide fractional admin support and in-house recruiting for those who want in-house administrative professional support. And then during COVID, I found that there was some issues with the tools available for administrative professionals, and the software designed today doesn't really match up with what we do, and I couldn't find what I wanted. So I decided to build my own, and so now I own a software company as well called Vexa Software, and we design software, crazy enough, for administrative professionals. So the admin field is where I live. It's where I love. It's where my passion is.
What a great story. I'm very curious from your time in the Air Force, and it sounds like, I mean, you were an administrative professional from the beginning of that time to the end of that time, but ending with a top-ranking official, right? So what is the difference?
Correct.
In working from, maybe I'm trying to think of the way I want to word this to get it, my question crystal clear, but, from a beginning level administrative professional to a top level administrative professional, what is really the difference? If we're talking and there's administrative professional listening, they might think, well, there's nowhere I can go. I'm an administrative professional. I'm going to type 90 words a minute for the rest of my life. But the reality is, in some companies, the administrative professional might be the first line of defense, so to speak, before you get to the executive or you get to that person. So what are those differences? What should people be striving for?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people when I first started my career, I was 17 when I joined the Air Force. And my very first job as an airman this was before computers, keep in mind, this is, early 90s. I was the person that sat in the front of the conference room and flipped the slides manually with an overhead projector. I sat on a little tiny chair, on a little kindergarten chair, so that they couldn't see my head. But that was my job, right? And so that's where I started. And then it's just like any other profession. You get additional responsibility, you learn additional skills, and you just kind of move up and move up. The unique thing about the Air Force, obviously, is you get to physically move. So it's not like I was within one company. I wasn't within the same company for 20 years. So I moved from, station to station. I've been overseas. I've been deployed. I just had a lot of opportunity to do some amazing things with some amazing leaders. And I happened to be working for a general at one time. I left his office. He became the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and called me and asked me to come work for him again, because I did a great job. I think that's why it was, because I did a great job before. And so I was very, very blessed with the opportunity to go to the Pentagon, and just if you think about it, as I'm saying it, I'm like, holy cow, I went from the person that sat in front and just slipped slides during a staff meeting to someone 20 years later who was working for the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and it's mind-boggling. But just like any other profession, you've got your education, you've got your career progression, and so for those folks that are just starting out, and this is just in general for anybody who's starting out in their career, you have to learn. You have to kind of figure out how things work. Nobody's going to be able to really start and be successful right at the top. So that's what I would tell someone who's just starting out.
So there's a lot of people probably listening that, one, are thinking a time before computers, and then they're secondly thinking, what is she talking about? Flipping slides? I don't understand. I'm making a little bit of light, but one of the things that I think out of what you just said is that you're talking about a 20-year period or 22 years in the Air Force. And in those 22 years, you saw a time where your job was to flip a slide so that they could continue to, when you left, I'm pretty sure that laptops and PowerPoint clickers and all of these things exist. And what really hit me was, so many times we see people get complacent. I had an administrative assistant that was amazing, but she was just about to the point of retirement. And this lady worked so hard to get something done that, and the reality was at the end of that, I never replaced her completely as an administrative assistant, because many of the things she did, there are softwares and things that will do those today, but learning, continuing to learn. So in those 22 years, imagine if you would have said, I'm not going past flipping these slides. Like, I'm going to get really good at it. That's what I do. You had to learn new things along the way. And that's what propelled you, I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I go talk to other administrative professionals, I tell them there's a lot of progression that has happened over the last 20 years. When I first started my career, I had a typewriter on my desk. I had the large metal file cabinet with the carbon copies and physical paper with me. And then I remember when the computers first came in, and we had a computer in a computer room. So one computer for all of us to kind of share. And then I remember when email started, and email was in the military anyways, email was just for the leadership. It was just for the commanders and a couple of other leaders, not everybody. And then I remember when the internet really started getting into offices, and it just opened up even more. And along the way, at every single one of those points, and it's something that's pretty interesting, and maybe it's just for the admin field, but at every single one of those points, the conversation came up, well, this is going to replace the administrative professional. Computers are going to replace us. And they did not. Email is going to replace us, and it did not. Now it's AI is going to replace us. And it's not. And what I have learned is that it's not the newfangled idea that's going to replace you. What's going to happen is the environment will change, and you either have to change with it, or you will be replaced by somebody who does. So I had to learn how to use a computer. I had to learn how to use email and master email. And now I have to learn as a continuing admin professional, and as a business owner myself, I have to now learn AI, and how is that going to change the business environment? How is that going to change what I can offer to individuals?
It makes sense. I think it changing with your environment. If you refuse to change, then you will be left behind. I just recently was involved or attended a education summit where some of our local high schools were involved, and they were talking about AI. And it was fascinating to me that some schools have already adopted and said, we're going down this road. It's not going to go away. We're going to teach our students. And other schools, oh no, we're still going to teach our students this way. And it'll be fascinating to see, what the end product, so to speak, is as we continue down the road. But the reality is that we sometimes have to think about what it is we have to learn. I look at AI as something that can make us more productive in different ways.
Absolutely.
I can ask or upload a document and ask AI to analyze that document. That sure saves me from sitting down and going through that process. So I wanted to also touch on, because I think there are so many people out there, and you're an administrative professional, not a secretary, not, this, that,
Thank
the
you.
other thing. And there was a time period where, yes, that was the accepted, terminology, but just like as things change, so maybe do titles and the way we think about a job. A secretary in 1950, he or she, but I will say probably at that time period, mostly she, right? Because
yes,
that was that time period. Today, administrative professionals, I don't know the data, but I would suggest that there is a much higher number of males and, or more equal distribution of males and females than what there was in 1950. But you talk about leadership, and what I want to kind of dive into is, one, do you feel that the leadership of an administrative professional is any different than the leadership of a CEO? Do the same principles apply? But I also want you to touch on dispelling the myth that the administrative professional doesn't need to be a good leader or doesn't need to have good people skills because there are still some people out there that might view it that way. So what is the leadership philosophy that you have found works? And then secondly, what would you say to help dispel that myth that the administrative professional doesn't need to necessarily be a leader?
So there's a lot to unpack in there, and so I'll try to walk through it. I firmly believe that anybody in an organization can be a leader. I do not believe that you have to have a executive title or a director of this or a director of that to be a leader. The difference that the administrative professional brings to an office is that we see everybody's perspective, right? So we see the marketing people's perspective. We see finance, we see legal, we see, sales. They all kind of come. So, and we're a center point for the office. We are often a center point. And so we have what I think is a unique opportunity to be a leader within the organization because we have all of those different touch points. As an administrative professional, I believe that we are an extension of whomever we are supporting. My job as an admin is to make sure that my executives' goals are met. And in order to do that, I have to know what's going on in the organization around us. And we in the admin field, we are trying to dispel some of the preconceived notions of what traditionally an administrative professional is and what they do and the value that they bring to an organization. I think now with the increased use of computers brought it along, internet brought it along, and especially now with AI, we are moving away from more of the tactile tasks, and we're able to now focus on more strategic tasks and be that strategic ally for our executive, which it is a leadership role. We as administrative professionals can analyze what's coming into our office what is the priority for our executive at that time, and make decisions on, who information gets into the executive at that time, or maybe it's not exactly what he or she wants or is looking for, and can send it back before it even gets in there. So there's a lot of opportunity there for the administrative professional to really be a leader within the office. Now, what I will say is that because of the relationship between the admin professional and the executive that they support, that has to be the right relationship, because if it's not going to work, right? So you have to have a good relationship between the admin professional and the executive that they support, or none of that's going to work. But I think the days, like you said, of us in the secretarial clerical positions, we're not needed that way any longer. We are not needed to type up emails. Executives can do that on their own. We are not needed to edit so much as we used to. Word underlines all of our errors, right? But we are still needed for that strategic look into the office. And then I'll just give you one more point that I think is important to understand is, although we are an extension, in the way that I view the relationship, we are an extension of the executive that we support. We are, I don't want to say it's as intimidating, because that's not the right term, but we are a little bit easier maybe to approach sometimes than the executive is. And so it's like an initial stopping point before going into the executive. And I think that lends a lot of opportunity for leadership by the admin professional within the office.
So you talk a little bit there, or you touched on the relationship between the admin professional and the executive. And how important is it for the executive to find, are they looking for somebody that mimics them, or are they looking for somebody that adds to the team?
So there's a lot that goes into a great relationship between an executive and an admin professional. I firmly believe that the administrative assistant is an extension of the executive. And we as a community, as an admin community, we all have the same basic core competencies, the same basic skills. And any skills that they don't have, those are fairly easy to teach. Those are they can be taught. Where the magic really happens between an executive and their administrative professional is when their personalities really do mesh well together. For instance, in my admin agency, I look at skills. I talk to the individuals to see what skills they want, but I also talk to them about their office environment and their personality, because I don't want to pair an admin professional who is a chatty Cathy with an executive who is an introvert, because no amount of skills is going to be able to make that relationship work. They're just going to have a hard time connecting with each other, right? And so some of it is personality, but what I also believe is there's a magical spot, and this takes time. There's a magical spot in there where the executive that is being supported starts to really trust their admin professional. And that takes time. That takes a lot of working together. It doesn't just happen. We are not magic fairies that can come in and wave a wand, and the very first day we start working, we're improving everything. That's an unrealistic expectation. And so what I tell a lot of executives is you have to give it time for your relationship to grow, and trust your administrative professional. And when they start really trusting the administrative professional, and the administrative professional does their part, by understanding what their goals are and what their priorities are. when you get those two working together, it's a sweet spot, and you really get a good flow between the two, and it just propels that particular executive that much more, and they're able to get a lot more done within their team.
So over the years, I have used virtual assistants, actually probably for 20 years now, at different points, different companies. And my question is, I'm curious what your thoughts are. I understand, and that's why I prefaced it with that I have used virtual assistants, and I understand the need for that, maybe on a certain project. Maybe when you're growing a business, you're not to scale yet. But my question, and I want to be careful because this is part of your business as well, but if you have a need and you need an executive assistant for 40 hours a week, are you, and you know, you can find people, you're not in a remote area where there are no people. Is it better to have somebody that you can work with in-house, or is virtual the way to go? And again, no, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. So it's a excellent question. And it is one that I get asked a lot by new clients, especially if they've never had anybody work virtually before. And what I tell them is it's dependent upon what it is that you're looking for someone to do. So if you have an office, a physical office, and you want somebody there to greet guests or, you know, do the office supplies, you know, those types of physical things, answer a phone, what have you, completely understand. And yes, you need an in-person individual, but that's an office manager, maybe not an executive assistant what I do. So that's not what I do. And if that's what you're coming to me for, you know, I'll tell them you're going to be overpaying for my services. That's not what I do. And not that there's anything right or wrong with that. It's just a different level of need. And working in a virtual environment is unique for some. I've been doing it for 13 years, ever since I've retired. So I've been doing virtual work for 13 years. And some people really, really love it. Some people really hate it. I don't know that I would ever go back to an office. There is nothing that I can't do for my executives that I can't do here in my home office. I don't have anything physical to do in their office. It's just not necessary at the level that I work. For people who say, well, I want somebody in office, and if that's your preference, great, because some people work best that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's some people that say, you know, well, I really want somebody who's offshore. That's an option too. There are no wrong answers in any of this. What I will say to folks is that there are pros and cons to both. The nice thing about a virtual worker is I have yet to find one client who needs 180 hours per month of work. The amount of time that is sometimes wasted in an office, you don't have that in a virtual office. When I step away from my computer to go do other things, my timer stops. If I've done 2 or 3 hours of work, it stops, and it doesn't start until I get back to it. So that's just something that's different. The other thing is I have no commute time. You know, there's a lot of pros that go along with it. But there are also cons. You know, I don't get that face-to-face with my executive. And not to mean that we don't meet. I try to tell my clients to at least meet once a week. Some of them I meet with daily, but we're not in the same office. You know, we're not there, you know, shooting the breeze and getting to know each other on a super personal level. And that's okay for me. But if that's not something that that you as CEO or entrepreneur that's just starting their business feels that will work for them, hey, I get it. There are in-house options, so there's plenty of room and there's plenty of work for both of them.
So, on the virtual side, what is the biggest reason for failure that you have seen?
The biggest reason for failure is that the executive doesn't communicate with the admin professional. It's when you're in a virtual environment, communication is king. There is nothing else that that will tear down any team or any relationship in a virtual environment faster than just not communicating. It's one of the reasons why I tell my EAs and I tell my clients, you should have at least weekly, if not daily. And it doesn't have to be a long, 10, 15 minutes to at least put eyeballs on each other, tell each other your priorities, etc. But communication is key. And the nice thing is we have so many avenues available. There's email and there's chat and there's, Skype and there's Zoom and there's all these options available. So there should be no excuse for not communicating. Unfortunately, it does happen. Some people just are not very good at communicating, especially in, via text or phone or what have you. And to those people, I tell them, okay, well, you may need an in-house person instead of virtual if you cannot communicate with your executive assistant.
I was anxious to know what your answer was because my experience was exactly the same. My first run through with a virtual assistant, I had some travel and they were taking care of setting everything up. And I also said, because for me, it's very important that I know where the coffee shops are because I need coffee. And I just simply said, along with this, can you give me the 5 best coffee shops, within a 10-mile radius or something of that nature? And they spent like 4 hours of the time that I was paying for and created me this unbelievable report that not only told me about the best coffee places, but what their revenue was and how many employees they had and what their management style was.
And you just want coffee.
And what I realized was because of the information that they had, they thought I was asking because I was interested in maybe acquisitioning one of these coffee shops while I was there. And it was completely and totally my fault because I didn't communicate. And, then I started to learn that, you say things like, it's important to me that I have a great cup of coffee every morning. I would like you to spend no more than 15 minutes, and those are the things that I had to learn along the way. And it's interesting to me that is probably the number one reason for failure, is communication. Interestingly, I got to add in that we know, anybody that has studied communication, we know that 90% of what somebody gets out of your message is not what you say, but your body language, your tone, all of those things. And in this world, you're removing that.
Yes.
And you also, so I have been well known in general in email communication to start out with, I'm in a wonderful mood because of this, and then explain the situation, or say, I'm slightly disappointed in the outcome of this. What can we do? Just because I want to be transparent, because I'm not in front of that person. They can't tell if I'm in a good mood, a bad mood, I'm disappointed, I'm happy. And so even with a virtual assistant, being able to get them to understand the urgency, the importance, maybe it's not important, those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I just did, last month, I just did a fireside with some lessons that I learned from the Pentagon. And one of them was that words matter. And so be very deliberate in the words you choose, especially in the environment that we work in, because texts are so easy to misread, emails are so easy to misread. But if you can be deliberate in what you say, and deliberate in the words that you choose, it can make a difference. I want to go to the coffee shop. It's, I have an executive, a client of mine, and he likes to have a gym when he goes to the hotel. And so it's one of the things that I look for, when I'm booking him for a hotel, is, does it have a gym? It's just making sure that what you're asking is clear. And then the opposite is true for the admin professional, right? When we hear things or when we see things, we have to make sure that we're understanding them correctly. And if it sounds a little off, like in your coffee, if it sounds a little off, ask and ask the question. There should be no issue with me as an admin professional going to my executive and saying, hey, you asked this. This is what I interpret it as, or this is what I think you're asking me, and either getting redirect or what have you. Often, sometimes, executives are, often short with their executive assistant. And so I encourage executives just to realize that, hey, we are not mind readers. We're just like everybody else. We need direction. But for the most part, I will say, any admin professional, you give them something to do and they're going to go 110% at it.
Absolutely. So where can people find out more about your companies and your services? Where would they go?
Absolutely. So they are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting and chatting with other admin professionals and other executives. They can also find us online at www.vexa services.com. Awesome.
So we end every session with kind of a couple of rapid fire questions. Our first question is, throughout your career, what is the single best piece of advice you've received related to business leadership or your career?
Yeah, that's an easy one because it's what I live by. And that was taught to me by the vice chairman that I worked with. And it is, do not tell me no, tell me how to make it a yes. And so that's all about looking for solutions instead of just coming across a closed door, figuring out how to open it.
I love it. Second question is, if we could magically get all of the school administrators from across the world sitting in front of you in one room, and you were able to give them one piece of advice of something that maybe they could add to the curriculum or add to a student's career that would help turn out a better, well-rounded, prepared for life student, what would be that thing?
I am a huge advocate for our schools. And I would tell administrators to let kids know there's no one path to success. College is not its own path. The military is not its own path. There are so many opportunities out there, and it's okay to try one, not like it, and try another. But realizing that there's so much out there in the world for them to try.
I like it. Next question is, what has throughout your career has been your go-to book that maybe you keep on the shelf and continually go back to?
Oh my goodness. There is a book that I really like, and now I'm trying to remember. It's a starfish. Oh crap. Now you're going to ask me, and I can't think of the title. The Starfish and the Spider. That's what it is. The Starfish and the Spider. It's a really interesting book about the way we think, the way we handle situations. It's a small book. It's a very easy read, but it has a lot of great nuggets in it.
Awesome. And the last question is, in today's ever-changing world of gadgets and technology and programs and software, apps, what are you using today in the technology world that you find most useful?
Oh my goodness. So I am a tech geek. So I have laptops and I have phone and I've got screens everywhere and microphones. I just bought a Remarkable, the Remarkable Pro, the writing tablet, because I'm also a note taker, and so I just bought it about a month or so ago, and I have absolutely fallen in love with it.
Awesome. I have the version before. I've been looking at this one, thinking about, thinking about getting the new one because it has color and some other things, but
yes.
I haven't.
Oh, it's a great buy. It was a great buy for me.
I haven't brought myself to do that yet because there's nothing wrong with my old one. Well, Molly, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us. It has been a pleasure. Hopefully maybe someday we can get you on again in the future. But thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out our past episodes and don't forget to give us 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening. And if you subscribe, you'll get updates and alerts whenever the new episodes come out each week. So don't forget to check out all of the past episodes we have. Until next time, we appreciate all of you.